Imagine you are standing before a door. It is not an ornate door, nor a menacing one. It is plain, solid, and strangely familiar. There is a single, unadorned handle. You know, with a certainty that resonates in your bones, what lies behind this door. It is a room that contains the complete, uncensored, and unedited truth of who you are. Not the person you perform at work or the person you present to your family, not the curated highlight reel version of yourself on social media, not even the person you tell yourself you are in your most private moments of self-reflection. Behind this door is the raw data. Every secret ambition you've dismissed as foolish, every flash of envy and resentment you've quickly suppressed, every unacceptable fantasy, every cowardly choice, every moment of breathtaking grace you've forgotten. It contains your untamed, chaotic shadow self, but it also contains your golden, terrifying, and unclaimed potential. Behind this door is the whole, messy, contradictory, and magnificent truth of you. And the question is, do you open it? Before you answer, feel the profound and immediate hesitation that arises. Feel the sudden dryness in your mouth, the tightening in your chest. 1,000 urgent, rational excuses flood your mind. Why would I need to do that? I already know who I am. Nothing good can come from digging all that up. It's better to let sleeping dogs lie. This hesitation is one of the most honest and revealing moments of your entire life. In that small, silent space between the question and the answer, you are face to face with the deepest and most universal of human fears, the fear of self-knowledge. This is the great central paradox of our quest for a meaningful life. We claim to want self-awareness. We read the books, we listen to the podcasts, we talk about the importance of knowing yourself. We treat self-knowledge as a noble, desirable prize. But when we are brought to the actual threshold, the actual moment of confrontation with our own unvarnished reality, we flinch, we retreat, we change the subject. We choose the comfort of our well-crafted illusions over the terrifying, liberating chaos of the truth. Why? What are we so afraid of? Perhaps we are afraid of the monster we will find. We are terrified that if we look too closely, we will confirm our deepest, darkest suspicion, that we are fundamentally selfish, fraudulent, weak, and unworthy. We have spent our lives carefully constructing a respectable, likable persona, and are terrified that a single, honest look in the mirror will shatter that persona, leaving us exposed and unlovable. We are afraid that the monster in the basement is all there is. Or, perhaps on some even deeper level, we are afraid of the God we will find. This is the more subtle and far more profound terror. What if, behind that door, we find not a monster, but a being of immense, breathtaking power and potential? What if we discover that the story we have been telling ourselves, the story of our own smallness, our own limitations, our own victimhood, is a lie we have constructed to avoid the crushing, terrifying responsibility of our own greatness? The philosopher Marianne Williamson spoke to this when she wrote, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." To face the God within you is to be stripped of all your excuses. You can no longer blame your past, your circumstances, or your personality for your unlived life. You are left standing face to face with your own squandered divinity. And the anguish of that confrontation can be far more unbearable than the shame of facing your own monster. So we stand before the door, paralyzed. We choose to live in the familiar, gray-lit hallway of our own self-deception, catching only distorted glimpses of ourselves in the polished surfaces of other people's expectations. We spend our lives polishing those surfaces, managing the reflection, while the real room, the room that contains the vibrant, chaotic truth of our own being, remains unexplored, its potential locked away, its energy slowly turning stagnant. This is not a hypothetical scenario. This door is real, and you stand before it in every moment of your life. It is there in the choice to have the difficult, honest conversation or to tell the easy, polite lie. It is there in the choice to pursue the calling that terrifies you or to stay in the job that is safe and soul-crushing. It is there in the choice to sit in silence and feel what you are truly feeling or to reach for the nearest distraction. The question is not a one-time event. It is the fundamental, repeating question of your existence. Are you brave enough? Are you brave enough to turn the handle, to push open the door, and to come face to face with the totality of who you really are? What lies on the other side of that threshold? And what is the true, hidden cost of a life spent in the hallway, too afraid to enter your own room? The reason we stand frozen in the hallway, terrified of that door, is that we are caught in a deep and powerful conspiracy. A conspiracy between our own psyche's sophisticated defense mechanisms and a culture that has a vested interest in our self-ignorance. The hidden problem is that the path of least resistance in modern life is the path of self-avoidance, a path that has been paved, lit, and furnished for our comfort. The psychological roots of this fear run to the very core of our being. The human ego, the part of us that says, I, is a masterful storyteller. Its primary function is not to perceive reality accurately, but to construct a coherent, stable, and survivable narrative of the self. As the psychoanalyst Carl Jung understood, this narrative is built upon a fundamental act of division. From early childhood, we learn to split ourselves into two parts, the acceptable persona and the unacceptable shadow. The persona is the curated, edited version of us, the part that is praised and accepted. The shadow is the repository for everything we were taught to be ashamed of, our negative emotions, our taboo desires, our vulnerabilities.
The door to the room of our true self is the door to the shadow. To open it is to threaten the ego's carefully constructed story. The ego is the guardian at the gate, and its primary weapons are denial, repression, and projection. It will do anything to keep us from looking at the raw, contradictory data that might invalidate its clean, simple narrative. It whispers, "You don't need to look in there. It's dangerous. It's ugly. It will destroy everything you've built." What the ego fears is not just the discovery of the monster, but its own dissolution. It knows that in the full light of the whole self, its own role as the sole, central narrator will be diminished. The fear of self-knowledge is the ego's terror of its own death. This internal psychological resistance is then powerfully reinforced by our external social world. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche saw that society, or the herd, has a deep and abiding interest in preventing the emergence of truly self-aware, self-actualized individuals. A person who has faced their own totality, who has integrated their shadow and claimed their own power, is unpredictable. They are no longer easily managed by the herd's morality of guilt and shame. They create their own values. They are a force of nature. The herd, which prioritizes stability and conformity, fears such a person. Therefore, the herd creates a culture that systematically discourages the journey of deep self-inquiry. It provides us with 1,000 pre-packaged identities, ready-made scripts that save us from the difficult, terrifying work of discovering our own. You can be the hustle culture entrepreneur, the spiritual wellness guru, the cynical intellectual, the devoted parent. These are not authentic selves, they are socially approved roles. By adopting one, you are given a sense of belonging and a clear set of instructions, relieving you of the existential burden of creating yourself. Our society is a vast and intricate identity emporium, designed to sell you a comfortable, off-the-rack substitute for your own tailor-made soul. In our contemporary era, this emporium has found its perfect showroom, the digital world. The thinkers of the Frankfurt School warned of a culture industry that pacifies the masses with shallow entertainment and consumerism. Today, this has evolved into what Byung-Chul Han calls a transparency society. We are encouraged to share everything, to make our lives transparent, but this is a curated, polished transparency. It is the performance of authenticity, not the reality of it. We are so busy crafting and managing the digital reflection of ourselves, the persona on steroids, that we have no time or energy left to explore the messy, unshareable reality behind the screen. The digital world is the ultimate hallway. It is a hall of mirrors, endlessly reflecting back our own curated image, creating the illusion of self-knowledge while actively preventing the real thing. It is a space designed for performance, not introspection. The hidden problem, then, is a perfect feedback loop of fear. Your ego, terrified of its own dissolution, erects powerful internal defenses against self-knowledge. Society, terrified of the unpredictable power of self-actualized individuals, provides an endless supply of distractions and substitute identities to keep you from ever undertaking the journey. We are offered a grand bargain. In exchange for never opening that door, you will be given a comfortable, predictable, and socially validated life. You will be given a role to play, a script to follow, and an audience to applaud you. You will be kept safe from the monster. And more importantly, you will be kept safe from the God. The price of this bargain is your own soul. You trade the terrifying, vibrant, and boundless reality of who you are for the safe, predictable, and ultimately sterile fiction of who you are supposed to be. And the unseen consequences of this trade are not just a feeling of inauthenticity, but a slow, creeping spiritual death that hollows out your life from the inside, leaving behind a perfectly decorated, but entirely empty house. The decision to live in the hallway, to never turn the handle on that door, is not a neutral one. It is an act of profound, if unconscious, self-abandonment. The consequences of this choice are not a single cataclysmic event, but a slow, pervasive draining of color from the canvas of your life. It is the quiet tragedy of a potential that was never met, a song that was never sung, a reality that was never fully inhabited. The first and most immediate consequence is a life governed by a quiet, nameless fear. When you are afraid of your own inner world, your entire life becomes an elaborate strategy of avoidance. You become a fugitive from yourself. This manifests as a compulsive need for noise, for distraction, for busyness. The silence is terrifying because in the silence, you might hear the stirring from behind the door. You fill your life with endless tasks, with constant social engagement, with the perpetual low-grade stimulation of your phone, not because these things bring you joy, but because they keep you from the terrifying prospect of being alone with yourself. This creates a chronic low-level anxiety. It is the feeling of being constantly on the run, a feeling that persists even in moments of apparent rest, because the thing you are running from is always with you. This leads to a second, more profound consequence: the loss of your own authority. When you refuse to face the full spectrum of who you are, you can never truly trust yourself. You are living on a foundation of self-deception, and on some deep unconscious level, you know it. This creates a profound lack of inner authority. You become chronically indecisive because you are disconnected from the deep, instinctual wisdom that lies behind that door. You look to others for answers that can only be found within. You become a perpetual seeker of external validation, from your boss, from your partner, from gurus, from online quizzes, because you do not have a stable internal center of your own. Your life is no longer guided by an inner compass, but is instead a reaction to the shifting winds of other people's opinions and expectations. You become a passenger in your own life, abdicating the driver's seat because you are afraid of the person who is supposed to be driving.
The third consequence is the curse of a shallow life. The room behind the door contains not just your darkness, but your depth. It is where your capacity for profound love, for transcendent creativity, for unshakable courage, and for deep spiritual insight resides. These qualities are inextricably linked to the messy, difficult, and shadowy parts of yourself. True compassion is not possible without an intimate knowledge of your own capacity for cruelty. True strength is not possible without having faced your own deepest fears. By refusing to enter the room, you are not just avoiding the darkness, you are cutting yourself off from the very source of your own light. Your life becomes a performance, played out in the brightly lit but ultimately shallow waters of the persona. You can experience pleasure, but not profound joy. You can have relationships, but not deep, soul-bearing intimacy. You can achieve success, but not a lasting sense of meaning. You have traded the terrifying, mountainous terrain of a deep life for the safe, predictable, and ultimately boring flatness of a superficial one. Ultimately, this leads to the most tragic consequence of all: a life of unlived potential, haunted by regret. The energy that is locked away behind that door, both the dark and the light, does not simply disappear. It curdles. The unexpressed creativity turns into cynicism. The unclaimed power turns into bitterness and resentment. The unfaced fear turns into a rigid, controlling personality. You become a ghost, haunted not by the things you have done, but by the person you failed to become. The regret that settles in later in life is often not for the risks you took that failed, but for the risks you were too afraid to take. It is the quiet, heartbreaking knowledge that you stood before the most important door of your life, and you never had the courage to open it. The unseen consequences have created a life that is, in a profound sense, a lie. It is a life built on the sandy foundation of avoidance. It is a house where the most important room is locked and sealed, its contents slowly decaying, its energy seeping out as a toxic gas that poisons the rest of the dwelling. The quiet, nameless fear has a name. It is the fear of your own wholeness. And the life lived in the hallway is not a life of safety, but a life of slow, spiritual suffocation. The question is no longer whether you should open the door. The question becomes, how much longer can you survive without doing so? The act of turning the handle and opening that door is the ultimate rebellion. It is a rebellion against the ego's fear, against the herd's demand for conformity, and against the entire cultural apparatus that profits from your self-avoidance. This is not a single act of bravery, but the beginning of a lifelong practice of courageous self-encounter. It is the journey of reclamation, the process of consciously and with great compassion exploring the locked room of your own being and bringing its contents into the light. The first act of this rebellion is to create a container of safety. You cannot and should not kick down the door in an act of psychic violence. The defenses your ego has built, however limiting, were constructed for a reason: to protect a vulnerable part of you. The rebellion begins by creating a new kind of safety, one that is strong enough to allow for a gentle exploration. For many, this container is the therapeutic relationship, a confidential, non-judgmental space with a trained guide who can help you navigate the difficult terrain. For others, it can be a dedicated contemplative practice like meditation or journaling, a trusted spiritual community, or a deep, committed friendship. The form of the container is less important than its function: to create a space where you can begin to look at your own truth without being overwhelmed, a space where the inner witness can be cultivated without fear of judgment. The second act of rebellion is the practice of shadow work. This is the courageous process of intentionally and compassionately engaging with the parts of yourself you have disowned. It is not about indulging your darkest impulses, but about acknowledging their existence. It begins by looking at your projections. Who are the people who trigger the most intense, irrational reactions in you? The person whose arrogance makes you seethe. The person whose vulnerability fills you with contempt. The person whose freedom sparks a bitter envy. These people, as Jung taught, are often unwitting mirrors, reflecting back the disowned parts of your own shadow. The rebellion is to withdraw the projection, to stop focusing on their flaws, and to ask the terrifying, liberating question: what part of this person's reality also lives in me? It is the work of owning your own capacity for all the things you have labeled not me. Each piece of the shadow you reclaim and integrate is a piece of your own lost power and wholeness returning home. The third, and equally important act of rebellion, is to claim your golden shadow. This is the work of facing the God within. It is the process of acknowledging your own unclaimed potential, your own light, your own greatness that you have kept hidden for fear of its power and its responsibility. Ask yourself,
What are the qualities I most admire in others? Whose success and brilliance do I look at with a sense of awe and longing? Just as your negative triggers point to your dark shadow, these positive projections point to your golden one. The longing you feel is the yearning of your own unlived potential. The rebellion is to begin the terrifying process of owning that light as your own. It means accepting that you have a responsibility to your own gifts. It means starting the project that terrifies you, speaking with the voice of authority you've been hiding, and taking up the space in the world that is rightfully yours. It is the act of giving yourself permission to be as powerful as you secretly fear you are.
This rebellion is a journey, not a destination. It is a spiral path that you will walk for the rest of your life, circling ever deeper into the truths of who you are. There will be moments of profound insight and liberation, and there will be moments of intense resistance and fear. The key is to approach the entire process not with aggression, but with a radical sense of compassion for yourself. You are unlearning a lifetime of conditioning. You are, in a very real sense, reparenting yourself, offering the abandoned parts of your own psyche the unconditional acceptance they never received. To open the door is to choose the difficult, messy, and unpredictable path of becoming whole over the easy, clean, and sterile path of staying fractured. It is the choice to live a life of truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. It is a commitment to the most important and intimate relationship you will ever have, the relationship you have with yourself. And this quiet, courageous, and deeply personal rebellion is the only thing that can lead you to the final, unshakable reality that awaits on the other side of that door. You have begun the rebellion. You have found the courage to turn the handle. You have stepped across the threshold, not into a single static room, but into a vast, ever-unfolding inner landscape. You have started the lifelong, courageous work of exploring its dark valleys and its sunlit peaks. You have sat with the monster and found that it is not a monster at all, but a wounded, frightened part of you, begging for acceptance. You have stood in the presence of the God and have begun to accept the terrifying responsibility of your own light. The hallway of your old life, with its gray, predictable safety, now seems like a distant dream. You have chosen the vibrant, chaotic, and authentic reality of your own being. But this journey into the self does not end with a simple sense of wholeness. It culminates in a final, paradigm-shattering realization that dissolves the very question we started with. The ultimate truth is not what you find behind the door. The ultimate truth is that you are the door itself. And you are also the hallway. And you are the room. And you are the one standing before it. The entire metaphor was a necessary illusion, a story we had to tell ourselves to begin the journey. It was based on the ego's fundamental error, the belief in a separate I who was on a quest to find a separate, hidden self. But the final realization is the collapse of this duality. There is no separate seeker and no separate thing to be sought. There is only a single unified field of consciousness, playing all the parts. You are not a fixed entity who has a shadow. You are a dynamic process that includes shadow and light. You are not a limited ego who possesses a higher golden potential. You are the entire spectrum of potential itself, from the mud to the stars. The act of facing who you really are is not about a separate you confronting a separate truth. It is the process of consciousness becoming aware of its own vast, paradoxical, and boundless nature. This is the freedom that lies beyond bravery. Bravery is still an act of the ego, the I who is steeling itself to face a threat. The final state is one of peace, not courage. It is the peace that comes from the realization that there is nothing to be afraid of, because it is all you. The monster cannot hurt you, because it is you. The God cannot overwhelm you, because it is you. There is no part of your inner world that is alien, that is not me. It is all a part of the magnificent, messy, and sacred territory of your own being. When this realization lands, the need to label and judge the contents of the room dissolves. You no longer need to categorize your feelings and traits as good or bad, acceptable or unacceptable. They are simply weather patterns passing through the vast sky of your awareness. Envy arises. You can observe it with a curious, compassionate detachment without needing to become the envious person. A moment of profound generosity arises. You can inhabit it fully without needing to cling to it as proof that you are a good person. You are the sky, not the clouds. This is the ultimate authority. You no longer need to look outside yourself for a verdict on your own worth, because you have withdrawn from the courtroom drama of good and evil. You are no longer trying to prove anything. You can finally just be. Look back at the person standing frozen in the hallway. Their paralysis came from a single terrifying question. Am I worthy? They were afraid that the room behind the door would contain the final, damning answer. The ultimate truth is that the question itself was the illusion. There is no judge. There is no verdict. There is only the isness of your own experience. Your worth is not a quality you earn or prove. It is a fact of your existence, as fundamental and unquestionable as the existence of the universe. The question was never, are you brave enough to face who you really are? That was just the call to adventure, the key that unlocked the door. The final silent answer that you discover in the heart of that room is that there is no one to face and nothing to fear. The quest for the self is the ultimate paradox, because the treasure you were seeking was the seeker all along. You were never in the hallway. You were never locked out of the room. You are and have always been the entire house. And your real life begins in the moment you stop trying to find yourself and simply begin the profound, joyful, and endless task of inhabiting the magnificent, contradictory, and sacred space that you already are.